Hi, I'm Carol Queen, and with my partner, Robert Morgan Lawrence, I'm the co-founder of the Center for Sex and Culture. And without Carol Leigh, I'm not sure the Center for Sex and Culture would ever have found a home. She reached out to us when we were beginning the center and said that there was space where her offices were, and why didn't we come and see it? And that turned into several years of working collaboratively next to and with Carol. And that wasn't even the beginning of my time with Carol Leigh, but without her, her generosity and her connection making ability and focus, which I think of as being extremely important to understanding Carol in her personhood, but also in her role in our culture, in the sex worker rights movement, but other movements too. She was an intersectional person in terms of the way she thought about how all of us could be working together toward maybe not the same exact goal, but goals that connected us. I saw Carol first in the 1980s in Eugene, Oregon, where I came from. I had been bouncing back and forth between the Institute for Advanced Study of Human Sexuality and Eugene, where I had a lot of friends who would put me up, and some work to do on the AIDS Council there. And Carol came to town when her book, partly her book, Sex Work, was released to talk about it. I didn't know if there were any sex workers in Eugene ever. I hadn't yet become a sex worker. I had been a feminist for a long time, and feminists back in the old days, many of them had a little trouble with all that. And I went to see Carol, and basically my mind was blown at her brain, her delightful mane, her performativity in the service of getting words into the world that she wanted. Speaking of which, without her coining the phrase sex work, I wonder what our communities and our work outside, talking to others about what we do, I wonder what it would look like now. That was so profound. Carol is one of the great philosophers of our community. And as I already said, one of the most important networkers we have ever seen. She networked globally. She networked locally. She networked all the time. Her great generosity at the end of her life, figuring out how her work and her mother's lives could carry it forward is stunning. It gives all of us different things to aspire to in some ways, I think. We all have such interesting relationships with money, don't we? But Carol tackled her relationship with money, I've got to say. And it's so meaningful to me that she did that. Let me say one more thing about what I observed about Carol. Another early time in my acquaintance with her would have been the very early 90s at the very latest. I ran into Carol filming. Of course, she was an extremely important documenter of our communities and our work too. Extremely important. I can't think of anyone more important in that role. She was at a Take Back the Night march that started in the San Francisco Golden Gate Park Panhandle and went up to North Beach, where the sex workers were, which is what part of the problem always was with Take Back the Night marches, is that the conceptualization, while it was against violence against women, super important, would walk to where sex workers were doing their work as though that expressed some problem around violence against women issues. You could cut it that way, but most of the folks in that movement, in that particular part of the movement, didn't have the insider understanding to cut it that way. Carol was there filming. And I was there, I might have been there to cause a little trouble. I'm not sure. But I might have been, though. I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, having transitioned from a more traditional type of radical feminism to sex positive feminism. I had a little bit of a chip on my shoulder, and I was like, Carol, what are you doing here? Why are you giving so much oxygen to a community that doesn't understand us and can misrepresent us sometimes? And she was like, I think it's really important, not only that I document this, but that I'm here to talk to people and bring my perspective about what we're doing here to them. And I was all, oh yeah, okay, me too. I will bring my perspective here too, bridging what I would have thought of as gaps, gulfs sometimes, was one of the things that Carol, I think, really naturally did. Maybe she had to work up to it like I did. I don't know, but it always seemed to me that she had an ear for anyone around her and was able to talk powerfully, delightfully to anyone around her. That was my impression of her. Finally, related to that, Carol was so important on both sides of the camera. She was in front of the camera all the time. She was performative as fuck. She would put on her Gilbert Baker made dress that made her look like the American flag, or that woman on the coin from Victorian times or whatever. And she would go out and she would redo all the words to Donna Summer songs, and she would lead protests, and she was so visually arresting and smart and funny and performative. And then she would get behind the camera and use it in as savvy a way from the other side. I know a lot of people who like to be in front of the camera. I know a lot of people who like to be behind the camera, but I'm not sure I can think of anybody whose relationship with the camera in the service of our work in the world, her work in the world, was as balanced and as powerful and important. Carol Leigh, rest in peace, rest in power. We will never forget you. I'm not sure we could have done everything we've all done without you, because you did so much of